Hi, I'm Mike Steven, and this is Gear Up. Today we're going to talk about waxing your skis, your snowboard, your cross-country skis. We're going to be talking about glide wax. Glide wax is the material that you put between the surface of your ski and the snow, and it helps you slide on the snow better. Wax should be temperature sensitive. There is universal waxes. They work okay, but if you zero in on the temperature a little bit more accurately, you will get a better glide out of the ski. First off, I'm gonna talk about, because a lot of people tell me, well, why would I want to go faster? I'm not a racer. The whole idea behind waxing isn't necessarily going fast because you want to win a race. It's more like if you're skiing on the backside of Kimberley Ski Hill, for example, when you go on the long cat tracks, being able to glide down those versus having to skate, or if you're a snowboarder, it sometimes can mean the difference of strapping in and not having to unstrap and push a little bit and then restrap back in. So having good wax on your board and wax close to the temperature that you're riding at makes a big difference. The other reason is sometimes you just need a little bit of speed on a run, and wax will allow you to gain speed quickly, and you can always use your edges to slow yourself down, right? So if you have a little bit too much speed and you're feeling uncomfortable, you can slow down. But if you don't have wax, you can't necessarily get that little bit of speed that you need to make it across that flat section or whatever like that. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is irons. A lot of people ask again, am I able to use my clothing iron? Yes and no. The principle of the heat is there, yes, but irons don't usually have temperatures on them. So these waxes are very picky about their temperatures at the temperature at which the iron is set at. So there's wax temperature, meaning the temperature of the snow outside, but then there's the iron temperature, how hot you put the iron to melt the wax. And there's different temperatures depending on your waxes. So you kind of got to follow the manufacturer's instructions on that. So in a nutshell, if you're trying to get accurate with your temperatures, probably the settings on your iron, like cotton and whatever else is on there for settings, probably doesn't match up exactly to a number. So you're going to be out on that. The other thing is we're going to get wax into kind of like the steam vents and all that kind of stuff. So honestly, getting a waxing iron, they're fairly inexpensive. You can take a look at them at any ski shop, should have some. They're fairly inexpensive and they will do the job properly. So the iron, so this guy right here, this is the base of the iron. When you spend a little bit more money on an iron, the base gets thicker and thicker, so it holds heat better and transfers that heat a little bit better. This one's a digital one, so it's got a readout saying exactly what temperature the iron is heating at the moment. So again, you don't have to have a super fancy iron, but it is nice to have a specific iron for skis and snowboards. So the next thing we're going to talk about is wax. We brushed over it a little bit, but if you look on this wax here, this wax is designed for -2 to -8, and your iron temperature should be around 150 degrees Celsius. So those are some important things. You got to know the weather, and then you've got to be able to set the iron to the correct temperature. The reason why you have to set the iron to the correct temperature is quite simply there's additives in ski wax. That's the stuff that makes you go faster. If you run too high a temperature, you're going to burn those additives out of the wax and not be able to reap the benefit of them. If it's too low, it's going to take you forever to wax the skis, for one, and two, it just won't penetrate into the ski as deep and last as long as it should. A lot of times people want to know, hey, what about liquid waxes versus hot waxes? Liquid waxes, if you look at wax this way, easy on, easy off. If it's easy to put on, it comes off quite easily as well. So hot waxing is the most time, it'll take you the most amount of time to do, but it'll also last the longest. And there's only a few simple things that you need. So we're just going to go over the list of things is an iron, obviously some wax. The next thing you're going to need is a scraper to scrape the wax. And we'll go over that and talk more in depth about that. You're going to need, after that, brushes, and that's to brush the wax pores out, and elastic bands. So these are kind of fancy ones, but any elastic band will do. So let's jump into it, and as we go through each step, I'll be explaining some things about the products. So first off, I'm going to take one of these skis off, quite simply, because we only need one ski for this purpose. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hook the binding, the brake, bring it over top, and that gets the brake out of the way of the ski. So once the brake's out of the way of the ski, you have a nice surface to work on, and you're not going to have to be dodging the brakes. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to apply wax to the ski. So I've already got my iron set to temperature. And then you just basically run it on the bottom like that and drip it onto the ski. Some people like to put it right onto the ski like that. I'd do it this way if I was doing that. Like this, and you can run it right on the ski. It's not going to hurt the base as long as you keep moving. Probably the biggest secret to waxing skis is to keep the iron moving at all times. So as you're waxing, you want to keep the iron moving consistently. You don't want to hold the iron in one spot for a long period of time. So first off, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the droplets of wax and I'm just going to melt them so they spread right across the whole base. So I work down the ski doing that. Okay, and as I get to the end here, so now that I've got it all over the ski and it's fairly flat, it's not in bumpy little segments, now I'm just going to move across the ski in a slow sweeping pattern like this. And as you're doing that, the wax is heating up and penetrating into the base where it heats up. If there's areas that I've kind of missed getting the wax over, I'll go over those areas extra. But I just want to kind of keep that iron moving and continuing to make that wax penetrate into the base of the ski. So you don't want to do it too much because you're going to unbond the ski. One of the easiest ways to tell when your wax is has sunk into the ski enough is that at the tip and tail you should be able to feel that the ski is getting warm. Not hot, warm. So warm to the touch. You should be able to hold your hand on it, no problem, and it feel nice. But you don't want it so hot that you start to delaminate the ski, because that's no good. We'll just get some penetration now. And then I'll do one last thing on another little trick to know if you've waxed it completely. Okay, now we've been putting the heat into the ski for probably about 2 to 3 minutes here, and we're kind of in the zone where it wants to be. I'm starting to feel the heat nicely through the top sheet. And the other thing that you can do is when you run the iron from front to back like this, it should still be a little bit wet and glossy when you get to the opposite end of the ski. So again, I'm running this way, and it's a little bit glossy there. If I run this way at about this speed, it's staying a little bit glossy. So at this point, we're ready to let the ski cool. You want the wax to cool completely on the ski. So we'll see in a couple seconds once we've got this wax all cooled. Here we are back. We've got the wax totally cool to the touch. Can't feel any heat in the ski. So it's time to scrape. Scraping, like you can use any sort of bench. Like you can buy fancy ski bices. This is one that we just built when one broke. It works pretty good. That one's a little nicer on the other side, but any kind of thing that will raise the ski up off so that you can get at it, or so that you raise the binding, off so that it's not tipping. Then you're going to take a scraper. Scrapers are made out of plexiglass. You want to keep your scraper sharp. You should keep it sharpened 90 degrees. You want a nice sharp 90-degree edge. And the reason why is if it's not sharp, doing this scraping process will take you a lot longer. And again, people ask, well, aren't you just scraping all the wax off? No. The wax that's gonna make this ski faster is already in the base. So it's right into the base material. So the first process is to scrape it and get all of the wax off, or as close to all of the wax that you can get off. I usually work tip to tail. You don't have to, but you know what? It's just a good habit to get into when you're scraping. The next process that we do, brushing, you have to do both directions. But for scraping, I just like to go one direction because I feel it makes it a bit smoother. Probably doesn't, but. So there we go, we're pretty much fully scraped now. One note, if you're doing a snowboard or if your scraper doesn't make it all the way across the ski, put a slight flex into it so the corners of the scraper don't dig into the base of the ski, because a Lexan sharpener or scraper is actually sharp enough to score your base. So now that we've done that, what I do is I do a quick wipe off with just a shop towel. So you just wipe that off. The next process is brushing. These are hand brushes. This is a copper mixed with nylon, and then this is a finishing brush. These are the two brushes that I'd recommend getting first. You don't have to get big fancy ones like this. You can get smaller ones because if you're not doing 30 pairs of skis a day, you don't need brushes like this. An easier way even more is a roto brush. And so a roto brush is exactly like these brushes, but it's just put on a drill so that the drill does all the work. What you're doing when you're brushing the ski is, the ski isn't perfectly flat. It's not like an ice surface or something that's perfectly flat. There's grooves cut into the base, micro grooves. And these grooves are shaped like a canoe. So they go thin, wider, thin. So when you're brushing, it's important to brush with this type of brush. It would be by making the drill spin in different directions. When you're doing it by hand, going forwards and backwards. So now we're just gonna clean up the ski real quick. We're gonna brush it down, and you're gonna see even more wax flying off it at this point. So you're getting small wax particulate coming off of it, and this is cleaning out all those little tiny grooves. So now I'm gonna switch the direction of the drill and go one more time. So that's getting the other end of the canoe cleaned out. Okay, that's brushed. I still always finish with a finishing brush. Just puts a nice polish on it. So you just kind of, again, a little bit of elbow grease, work back and forth. And this is gonna get all the fine wax particles out from the ski. So as we kind of do that, the ski's starting to look really quite nice and silky. The last thing I like to do is take my shop towel, make sure it's nice and clean, so get a clean surface, and then just buff it with that. It just finishes it off and gives it a beautiful polish. So when you're finished to ski, it should look like that. It should look like black and silky. If it looks white and furry at all, you need to re-wax your ski because you haven't done it quite right. So I think I went over waxing tip to tail, no pun intended. If you have any questions, definitely pop down to your local ski shop. They can help you get the gear that you need to wax because it's not a lot of stuff and it's not a hard process, as you can see. Yeah, so go down and talk to them. They'll get you set up and you'll be able to wax your own skis and be right on temperature and have nice fast skis. Thanks for watching Gear Up. I'm Mike Steven. Hi, I'm Mike Steven, and this is Gear Up. Today we're going to talk about helmets, ski helmets and snowboard helmets in particular, and just what's going on in the industry and what are some of the new features. Just do a little explanation on why you might want to wear one. The first thing I'll talk about with a helmet is fit is key. So making sure that the helmet fits you properly, meaning if the helmet is loose and sloppy, you're actually going to impact your head fairly hard on the inside of the shell, which is still a fairly firm material. You want that inside of that shell nice and up against your head so that when the impact comes, it's next to your head and then the shell can absorb that impact. So fit is key. There's going to be different fit systems that are on helmets. Like this is a BOA system. So first you're going to get the right size of helmet, and then you're going to dial this little guy in here, and it's going to size it down perfectly to your head. On the back of them, you'll see a goggle strap holder for goggle straps so you don't lose your goggles. A common thing that's starting to come in helmets, or that comes in a lot of helmets, is venting. Skiing can be pretty hot. Sometimes when you're slogging through some heavy powder or hitting moguls or doing some challenging runs, you're going to get your heart rate up and you're going to start to sweat. Well, you can open up this venting on this helmet, and it allows some of that hot air to exhaust off your head while still protecting your head. A neat little logo that you're going to see out and about in the world, and it's this logo right here. It says MIPS. So MIPS is a neat technology. MIPS isn't specific to any helmet. It's a technology that people put in helmets, and they're in majority of helmets. Some form of MIPS is in helmets. And what MIPS is MIPS is basically a movable inner liner. So it's actually on these like bungees and it can move. So the whole idea behind it is that it allows the helmet to actually rotate on your head. When you take an impact, what happens is your brain rotates inside your skull. If this is allowed to rotate, it takes some of that force and puts it into the shell so that you're reducing some of the rotational force, which is actually causing the concussion. Blunt force trauma, a lot of times people think it's the impact. It's actually your brain rotating inside of your skull that can cause concussions. Yes, you can get it from blunt force, but there's always going to be some rotational force in there, and this helps mitigate that. When you look in the helmet, you'll usually see that liner in there, that little slippery layer of plastic allowing that to move around. Some of the other technologies that are going into helmets these days, kind of neat. This one is a magnetic closure. So you just kind of hold it close to it and it automatically does itself up. With a snap of the fingers, it undoes and just let it kind of do itself up. You just get it close to where it needs to be and it locks into place. There's also the regular buckles, all that kind of stuff. Obviously important to do up the chin strap on a helmet because it's only going to stay on your head if you keep that chin strap done up. Another thing that's going on in helmets is goggle venting. So you have venting in the top of your goggle, and if the brim of your helmet is keeping the hot air in, you're going to fog up your goggles. So if you look in here, there's these channels that go right through from the vents, and they're designed to take that hot air, exhaust it out the top so that you keep your goggles clear and clean. That kind of goes over it with a normal helmet. On the helmet box, in terms of fitting them for yourself or a junior, usually the boxes will say how many centimeters they are. So for example, this helmet here is a medium and it fits 55 centimeters to 59 centimeters. So that's measuring around the kind of the big part of your head, right above your ears and around your forehead. So you can actually measure your head and get a pretty good idea of where you should be fitting on the scale of small, medium, large, extra large. And that's definitely helpful when fitting youth with helmets, is knowing that, because sometimes they don't love them being put on their heads. Another new thing that's kind of coming out of the woodwork now and is becoming much more common is helmets with integrated visors. So the whole idea behind an integrated visor is that the helmet allows you, or the visor allows you to just flip it up out of the way when you're hot and you're starting to fog up the lenses. You can just flip them up out of the way, and then you can also quickly just fold them back down into position. When it's on your head, it actually looks fairly normal. Like, it doesn't look like that there's like a visor. It looks like just a set of goggles with a helmet. And like I say, the big benefit of that is that to flip them up out of the way, you never lose them off your helmet. To flip them up out of the way when it's hot is simple and easy. And you're going to get less fogging because the way that it fits, you've got a little bit more air exposure for air to kind of circulate in the lens and give you the ability not to get fogged up. But I'll just throw this on so you get a bit of an idea. But when it's tucked up out of the way, it just looks like you've put them up on the top. And when you're ready to rock and roll, they just come down. They fit quite cleanly onto your face. And you've got the full advantage of a goggle without ever losing it, and with being able to flip it up nice and easy if you need to. So that technology, in my opinion, is very cool when it comes to kids. Because kids usually manage to lose their goggles, step on their goggles, scratch their goggles, lose their goggles. They do everything. Whereas if this is just flipped up like that, and when they need the goggle to put it down, it's awfully nice. And the surprising thing is that in the kids' helmets in particular, the industry hasn't charged a whole lot extra to put the visor on. So you actually end up saving a little bit of money, because the visor and helmet combo is just like goggles and helmet. And goggle and helmet is more expensive than a visored helmet. So it saves you a few bucks, and it keeps your goggles nice and clean and scratch-free and all that kind of stuff, because the helmet usually stays on the kid's head. This year, I've picked up my kids' goggles 2 or 3 times laying in the snow as they've skied away. So definitely helps out. Okay, and I'm just going to go over one more thing on this helmet because it's kind of fun. So I talked about BOA on helmets. There's all sorts of different head retention systems. This one's actually using air, so it's very similar to, go back to the 90s, to the Reebok pump, and you pump it up, it fills all the voids, so it adds some cushioning, and on top of that, it makes the helmet fit better. So it's kind of neat that way. One of the things to think about for sure when buying a helmet is to think about whether you're a person that perspires a lot or not. If you're a person that perspires a lot, you may want bigger venting, versus some small venting like this might be enough for somebody that sweats a little bit, whereas somebody that sweats a lot, really venting is a huge factor when you're selecting your helmet. So I find that it's really easy to get too hot in a helmet. People say, well, are you cold in your helmet? Well, no, it's kind of like wearing a toque that thick, which is the foam, and then covering it in a plastic shell that doesn't breathe. So your head retains all that warmth if you don't have some form of venting. One thing that is nice is there's these things called ninja clavas or balaclavas, and they kind of go over your head and kind of around your face here to help seal the helmet to your body around your neck and seal up all those air gaps. Those are definitely pretty comfortable and pretty popular. I'll show you another couple little odds and ends that are quite popular, simply because we've talked a little bit here about scratching goggles. Scratching goggles is a drag because goggles are fairly expensive, and when you scratch them, it gets really annoying and blocks your vision. So first off, there's these things called goggle socks, and they can go over top of your goggle so that you can actually just leave it on your goggle until you're ready to ski, and then just peel it off, put it in your pocket. It also doubles as a chamois to be able to clean the lenses of your goggles. Anti-fog spray, yes, it legitimately works. Spray it on, let it dry for probably, again, 5 to 10 minutes, and then wipe it off, wipe the excess off, I should say. There's also like fog-treated cloths, so cloths that are treated with anti-fog technology so that it absorbs the moisture into the material versus creating fog on your lenses. Another thing to help your goggles and make your skiing experience more enjoyable is that when you have or when you do fog up your goggles, try not to touch the inside of the lens. The inside of the lens is soft when it's fogged, meaning it's soft when it has water on it, or because the material, when it absorbs that moisture off your face, it becomes more vulnerable to scratches. So be very, very careful with the inside of your lens. If you are fogging, try to just like waft it out in the air versus wiping or scraping at it. If your goggle ever fogs up, throw it in your jacket. Let it completely go to melt point, and then gently dab it off. And that'll keep your goggles working for a lot longer, so you don't have to buck up and get another pair too soon. You know what? I think I've gone over a bunch of stuff with helmets and goggle tips and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully some of these tips will help you enjoy your time out on the slopes a little bit more, and hopefully you have a little bit more information when you are purchasing a helmet or trying to keep your goggles clean and clear. I'm Mike Stephen. Thanks for watching.